information. I've gotten a lot of feedback from everybody, and they're just kind of blown away with the data that we have. So again, thanks to everyone for all the work that you've done. And now we're on to phase 2 or 3, depending on how you look at it. We've gotten a lot of data from our analysts extraordinaire. What is, from y'all's perspective, how do you want to look at this data? How do you want to go about discussing it? What's the easiest way for y'all to ask your questions, state your concerns, talk about how you want to move forward on it? Go for it, Nina.
Well, I guess I would like to start from the end point and work back, which is to say, I would like to talk about what sorts of recommendations we think we would like to make. Not the actual recommendations, but what categories of recommendations we'd like to make. You know, are we making structural recommendations? Are we making recruitment? Are we making process? Are we making, you know, from what we've had a chance to see so far, and I personally want to have a little more opportunity to kind of dig into our findings from the latest round of information, because I honestly haven't had an opportunity to really do that. But I think it would be helpful for us in making decisions about how to proceed, to just get a sense of what our goal is in terms of the kinds of categories of recommendations that we think we're going to likely be able to make with confidence that they are based in our findings and will serve to address issues that have been raised. Does that make sense to folks?
Elise, let me ask you a question on this document that you did, the Jamboard.
Yeah. It's blurred out on your
Page,
screen.
You said
looking at background, but
right. So you said key takeaways from the report. You mean this latest survey, correct? Not the report that we've already done.
No, I took that list directly from the key takeaways that we had summarized on one of the early pages of the report.
Okay.
I just we should at least address in some way each of those key takeaways, but certainly there will be more categories as well.
Nina, at this point, I don't think we are bound by any self-made parameters. If we see an area that the respondents say is an issue, then I think that we can, put that, let's start making our buckets, and start seeing. And then at some point we can, let me turn my light on. We can determine prioritization based on frequency of mentions, concerns, and maybe even, how do I put it? Level of concern. Like if they say this particular issue is going to explode the whole process if we don't do something about it soon. Who knows if that they haven't really said that, but if that's the case or the way that we look at it, just the whole thing about reporting, their written reports seems to be, a boondoggle. Technology seems to be an issue. Just some of these things, but start making our buckets and seeing if we can work from there. Does that make sense to y'all? Elise, Jay, Ted, tell me what you think. Alan, what you got?
Although I think Ted might have been before me. Did you raise your hand, Ted?
Yeah, but go ahead.
Okay. My concern is, and Elise received her deserved accolades from council and those who were in attendance, and as well as the work that was done by the group, of course. But my concern is, will we have any impact on how the boards and commissions may be restructured in the future by the city manager, by staff, and council input? So going forward, I'd like to think about what we could do to assure that not just it's been read, but that some action is going to be taken. And this could be through some direct efforts on behalf of RWG to the public, to the media, to the written media, and maybe some other options too that we haven't thought of. But I want to be sure that the year and a half that we spent already and the year that we're spending this year will be worthwhile. Personally, it is, but I want to make sure from a community standpoint that we've had some impact on how boards and commissions function, and whether or not city council hopefully will listen to the input of the boards in the future. That's all I have to say.
Well, I will tell you that Ben has said that the boards and commissions have tabled the work that they were going to do about redesigning these boards and commissions until they get our recommendations. So I would say that they're waiting on our recommendations before they implement any of their new ideas. Now, I'm not saying that that means that they're going to listen to everything we say. I can't guarantee that, but they're certainly ready to listen to what we do have.
And by the way, excuse me, but I'm going to have to jump off around 6:20. I'm going to the Hawk Creek Citizen Forum tonight.
Me too.
Kennedy Forum. I'm sorry, Kennedy Forum. Okay.
So, I mean, I think that we've got a waiting audience with city council. Ted, did you have something you were going to share?
Yeah. So a few things. One is I, along with Nina, need more time to get into this. I really haven't had an opportunity to do that. I think there can be some value in Nina's suggestion of like looking at sort of the broad buckets of recommendations that we can make, and then, as you said, delve in and start, like filling up those buckets. And I want to echo Nina also. I think it's extremely important that our recommendations be data-based.
Yes.
So and I want to address what Alan was saying. I agree that it might be beneficial to, gain more exposure for our work through media outlets and as such. The thing to be very, very cautious of, in my opinion, is that we do not put ourselves in a position or be perceived as trying to end run the city staff. That I think that would be, that could just destroy everything we've done in terms of our credibility and effectiveness. I think we have to have a certain amount of trust in city staff to carry our recommendations forward. And we can support that by by publicizing them, but I would be very, very leery of getting into any kind of adversarial position or anything signaling mistrust.
I agree. We do have to be careful of that.
I agree. Also, we should not try and run and work with them as closely as we can. Ben has shown a lot of support to date, and same with Sarah. So I would hope that continues going forward.
Apparently, our presentation was a bit of bone of a contention with some of the other folks who were there to present. They didn't understand the differential in our ability to have that block of time to talk, and theirs is public input. So, that was interesting to watch that little play. But I think, again, that goes back to the level of trust that we have built with city staff and the elected officials. And I don't want to flip that over either. So obviously we all want to have a little bit more time to digest the information. Elise, or Jay, what type of next steps do you see?
I guess I'll jump in. As far as next steps, I know I've done the analysis that I was planning to do. I am interested to see Jack's work. I had started to look at the comments, but they were quite lengthy. And as I was getting into them, I remembered that Jack had done a lot of work on that. And for consistency's sake, I felt that leaving that to him was probably.
It seems as though almost every respondent had something to say on every question. It was darn close to it.
Yeah. So as far as like next steps, I put like the jam board together to kind of get myself
very helpful
in a frame of mind. And so I guess what I was thinking about how we could use that as a tool, and maybe we can use this like between this meeting and the next meeting, is, people can add all kinds of sticky notes to those. And so we could start just kind of like brain dumping any potential recommendations into that. And so then when we get together the next time, we could start refining some of those recommendations.
So when on your Jamboarding, Elise, you didn't take every single comment and put a sticky up.
No. So what I did to put this together was I went through all of those individual like board by board reports that I had prepared. And I actually went through every single one of those and just kind of like briefly went through it to see if I could identify any particular things, as well as I read the comments very closely. And if there was any recommendation from the comments, I put it with the green stickies in the upper right of each one. And then as I went, I kind of added the yellow stickies with my various thoughts. And on a few pages, there's some like images that I grabbed that sort of, spoke to that particular topic.
So your yellow stickies are kind of a distillation of what you have analyzed and glommed together, correct?
Yeah, those are just my thoughts as I was
Okay.
looking through it.
And the green are more specific comments from the respondents?
Yes, if there was
Okay.
any type of specific
Mhm.
recommendation I could pull out of it, those were in the green.
And I'm looking for, because we had the word clouds, and that one on strengths, no, the challenges and more training. The more training I thought was interesting in technology, and I'm not seeing it on your Jamboard. Sorry, hold on. That was a big issue on the word cloud. I wonder if is it lack of technology or lack of knowledge of how best to use the technology. Were y'all able to, because what I saw, I couldn't quite tell if, I think it's more of a lack of how to use it or what's available to use,
I
you
think
know, how
it's
they can work it into making their meetings better.
the impression that I got from the comments was that it was a large part frustration with the technology, that the technology would frequently not work, and that there was a need for more technical assistance in terms of how to operate the technology and how to troubleshoot problems when they occurred.
At like
And specifically
in
as it
real
related
time.
to live streaming of the meetings, that was the issue.
Okay.
Right.
Are you all comfortable in working off of the Jamboard and starting to put your comments, thoughts into that? Or do you need a different format to do that in?
I haven't seen the Jamboard, so I don't know. But Nina has had her hand up for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry, Nina. I've been looking at my papers. What you got?
So two things. One is I'm encountering the Jamboard for the first time, so I'm not familiar with it. I'm going to need to tinker around with it before I really understand what its capabilities are and how it's using. If you know of a quick and dirty tutorial available for that, I might appreciate that. The other thing that I realized as I was looking back over our previous survey and over the latest one is that one thing I don't think we directly addressed, and please correct me if I'm not right about this, but I don't think we asked any questions like, how long does your typical meeting run? Things like just very basic factual things about the mechanics of the meetings and so forth. And maybe we can determine this data from some other thing, like, for example, God help us, going and looking at the running times of all the YouTube videos of, meetings that have been streamed or what have you. But I think that that's the kind of information that ought to be part of our data set when we're making recommendations. If we find that some commissions run or committees run twice as long as others, that should be something to know. And is there any correlation with satisfaction or dissatisfaction? Is there any, I think there may be objective data that we can mine that would contribute significant nuance and substance to our recommendations. Maybe it's some commissions or committees or boards are just dealing with more gnarly technical problems and they need to run longer. But I don't feel personally like I have any kind of direct intuition or information about that. And I think it's something that is really germane to crafting actionable and effective recommendations. There may be other objective things to know about participation and meeting style and all that other stuff that also would have a correlation with effectiveness and participatory satisfaction. So I just offer that up as something that I wish I had thought of sooner, as something to capture for our understanding of how these things are working. But I don't think it's too late to find that information and incorporate it as part of our understanding of what works and what doesn't work.
Patrick, if I were to go on to the YouTube channel, can I just scroll through and pick up that info? Just
yeah, I'm not sure if it would be that quick, but yes, you could go to the city's YouTube channel and just start pulling up, the videos for definitely most boards and commission meetings, the ones that have been recorded. You could generate some metrics off of that and put it in a spreadsheet.
Okay. Then I'll take that on. And see what I can come up with. And then going back to an earlier question about the cost of this, I know that doesn't have an impact per se that we had talked about it on in the emails, but it would be, and it's not our decision to determine if that's a good use of the city budget money or not. But it would be it may be illustrative if some of the commissions that are maybe less effective are having to use more staff time, which makes them more expensive, but their outcomes are less than desirable, or they're not getting any outcomes. There is a correlation, but it's not for us to make the determination if that's used good money or not. And I don't know if it should be part of the report, but it just might be illustrative from an analytical perspective. I don't know. Alan?
For Elise, is the Jamboard, I've never used it before. Is it pretty intuitive? Just by jumping in and kind of looking at what you've done today?
Sure. Should I share my screen and just kind of point out a few
Yeah,
features?
why don't you just kind of show
That'd be
how it
great.
works a little bit? That'd be
That'd
great.
be great. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so I think you should be seeing my screen now. Basically up at the top, you can go back and forth between different frames. You can click at this little arrow here to see, all of them if you want to scroll between them. So at the front here, I just listed the key takeaways from the report. And then on each subsequent slide, I have taken one of those key takeaways. I have it here in teal. And then on this side, you can use this little sticky note. And it'll pop up, and you can there's a limited number of characters, but you can type whatever you want. You can change the color. And then you just click save, and it'll pop up here, and then you can just drag it, resize, whatever you need. That's really all the features I've been using so far.
Okay.
And Elise, while you have this pulled up, I just wanted to suggest, if we are going to work on this between meetings, it might be good for us to have some protocol, like putting your initials before comments you add, so we know
Oh,
who
excellent.
said things, so we can clarify. And I think, just to make sure I'm understanding the sections, thoughts, are those your thoughts in this area to this point? And then respondent recommendations is stuff that's based somewhat in survey data. And then if we wanted to suggest what recommendations might be created, those would go in the bottom right, the draft recommendations section. Is that the structure you're thinking here?
Yeah, so let me see if I can zoom in a little on this example. So on, what is this one? Clarity of mission and goals. As I was going through, I just noticed how everyone was talking about wanting clearer direction from council with regard to their goals. And then if you look at the answers to the questions, who sets goals for this board, like board members are doing it at twice the frequency as city council. So that to me showed that kind of is where the issue comes in, that board members are setting the goals most of the time when really they would rather their goals are derived from city council. And so, yeah, this was just a place to kind of store all those thoughts as they were coming up, but they didn't necessarily have a recommendation tied to them yet.
Okay, Alan, and then Nina.
Just a quick comment based on what you said, Stacy. I do like the idea of looking at relationships. It may not be statistical relationships, but if we can kind of correlate boards that are functioning effectively and not having turnover and making solid recommendations, and the membership feel that what they're doing is not only responsible but is effective in their own minds, and looking at staff relationships to those comments, I think that would be helpful to see where there's connectivity between positive board effectiveness in terms of membership perceptions and staff perceptions too. So I don't know if we can do that, if there's an effective tool for looking at those kinds of relationships, but I think in terms of the final output of our group, it might be helpful in terms of drafting recommendations. That's all I have.
Very good, Alan. Hold on one second, Nina. Elise, this box here that has your circles underneath the goals are primarily set by board members, city council input is secondary. What is that? Is that just your hand notes?
Yeah, if it's in a sticky note, that's just my interpretation of the data.
Okay. Okay, Nina, you had a comment?
Yes, I think it would be useful for me to, and I know this exists somewhere, I just don't know how to access it, to look at the most salient concerns by board. Because if we're going to be making recommendations, my guess is that they're not all going to be one size fits all. And so it would be helpful, or it may be that some boards are elevating a particular issue and others are elevating a different issue. And if we want to be comprehensive in our recommendations, it's not necessarily just about which need appears in the most different places, but also which needs seem to be the most salient for particular boards.
Well, I have the data in a Excel spreadsheet where you could sort it by boards and be able to look at blocks of comments. Just say, okay, lines 2 through 12 are Hayek or something like that, and look at what Hayek is saying, and then go down to the next section and look at what, multimodal is saying. Is that what you're, would that be helpful?
I dropped a link in the chat that actually has all of those board by board reports that I prepared. So, we got that dynamic report at the end that just had all of the responses put together. And I basically recreated that report, but filtered to only include responses from that board. And I found that really helpful if you want to take a look.
That's super, Elise. And Patrick, will you be capturing all these links in the minutes so that we can revisit this, each of us as our...
Yeah, I can do that.
That would be super helpful. Thank you.
Holy shit, Elise.
And thank you, Elise. You're a genius.
Hold on, I'm looking at one of these.
These have been here since we wrote the paper, you guys. You're just
Right.
looking at them.
I have never seen these pages. Never. Yikes. Okay, but wait a second. These are, but we don't have that from the board liaisons.
No.
Okay. Oh. Hold on, I'm pulling up
However, I do
something
think
here.
it's worth noting that Elise did do some analysis of the board liaison responses.
Right.
It's not the exact same format, but I was looking at it before this meeting and it's pretty helpful.
Right. Yes, it is. Let me show let
Do you
me
want me to
show
show
you
one
what
of
I'm
these?
talking. Yeah, let me share this screen. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, which one of these is share screen? Present now, is that share screen?
Yeah, the
That's right.
square with the up arrow.
Mm,
And then you can select like one particular tab that you want to share, or you can share whatever's on your screen.
And that's not the one I want to share. Hold on, let me see what it's called. Okay. All right, hold on, y'all. You know this isn't my area of expertise. Hmm. Stat family survey. Okay. It's not showing up. Oh,
Ted, did you want to ask your question while she's working on that?
maybe this will be it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I in answer to Alan and partly to Nina too, that one thing that I was planning on doing once I get into the data is to look at the responses of the from staff and the boards and commission members and do some correlations with respect to you know, positive, more dysfunctional among members and staff, and see if we have correlation among boards. And so that's something that I'm planning on taking on.
Thank you, Ted. Thanks.
Okay, let's see if this is it. It's not showing the way I thought it. I give up. Never mind. Anyway, Nina, I will send you the Excel spreadsheet, and I think that you're savvy enough that you can look at it and see how you can sort it based on the boards, and maybe that will help you. And you can look at it and you can just see the groupings of what the specific boards are saying. I think all of us need some time to just kind of digest what's in here and go from there and see. And I'm trying to think if Elise, you and your team should move forward on how y'all want to work. I think Jack's work on the open-ended questions is probably good to move forward on. Maybe some of the rest of this we can pause for a moment while the rest of us get caught up with y'all's knowledge of what's in what data is being shared with us. Nina, you had a comment?
Well, I'm not sure quite how to put this, but one thought that I have is You know what, one reason why I'm curious to see the responses more, to look at the responses more carefully by board, both for staff and for participants, is I want to get a picture for myself of which boards seem to be making their participants feel most useful and which ones are actually the most effective in communicating with council and which ones, in other words, let's call them high functioning boards. What are their characteristics? How many participants do they have? How regularly do they meet? What are the characteristics of those boards? Now, again, subject matter is going to have an influence on this. If you're on a board that has a highly contentious, very stressful topic, you know, some of those things are going to have consequences. It's inevitable that that's going to be a little rockier or whatever. There's going to be more turnover. But I guess I'm interested in, as a group, that we try to identify what we consider to be a high functioning board. What are the characteristics of that? What are the things that we would like all of the boards to achieve in terms of their effectiveness, in terms of their membership, in terms of, because until we have a picture of what a high functioning board looks like, what are we making recommendations? What does it mean to make recommendations? What's the purpose of making recommendations? It seems to me the purpose of recommendations is to have more effective high functioning boards that achieve their mission and contribute to council decision making. But maybe my idea of what a high functioning board is not shared amongst you all. So I think we should identify what we think that is.
Jay?
Yeah, I just have a couple thoughts about that. I think sample size is a big concern with this in looking at the responses, 1, 2, 3 people at a time. And at the same time, it seems to me that our focus is more about city council and staff and how their relation to the boards, whereas the community members who are involved in the boards, there's a lot less control over how they operate, right? Like we can make recommendations to city council, but how do they then, like it's hard enough to get people to fill these boards without saying, well, you need to have this kind of personality that makes it, that we found to be correlated with a high functioning board. So from my perspective, our focus is ought to be less on how the board itself functions, but what is within the purview of city council. What influence can council and staff have on how they relate to the boards, the direction they're providing, the support they're providing, how they're hearing the outputs of those boards. Then kind of on the functioning of the board.
Well, and when you look at the number of the amount, how often, geez Louise, how long these liaisons have served on these boards, I would say the average looks to be about 5 years, but going up to, with Stephanie having served for 13 years on one of these, 2 years, 9 years, 7 years, 12 years and 3 months, 5 years, and then some, a year, a few months, that sort of thing. So we're talking about, there could be a couple of things involved here. It could be staff burnout, or just, I'm so sick of this particular board, I'm about to go crazy and I'm no longer truly vested myself in it. Or it could be, I really don't know what I'm doing yet because I've only been doing it for 3 months, kind of thing. I think you've got, there is a huge, huge differential in experience on these boards from the liaisons. Ted and then Patrick, please.
Yeah, I want to, I concur that, we have to be careful about sample size in this. And I think that correlating the the observations and perceptions of staff and members may, strengthen some of these things. If we, the more we get sort of validation from both sides, I think the more confidence we can have that it's not just a few people griping. And we'll see how that turns out when we examine the data. And yeah, and also I agree that the things are going to have to come down from city council and from staff, but I do think it's important to look at the boards and how they're functioning, and because that is going to have that is going to affect how these recommendations that we present, like how staff and city council are going to address those. So, yeah, so I think there's, there's value on both sides, and the more that we can put things together and validate, the better.
Patrick?
Yeah. First, I'll say I do agree that it's important to consider our audience. We're making recommendations to council; those go through staff. I think I'm hearing a bit of both. That it's also important to look at how boards are functioning to see how that relates to what we can recommend from how the city as an organization would implement those things. I guess in that context, I know that Ted has offered to try to correlate the staff responses to the board member responses. It seems like our former survey analysis group is all kind of taking up different pieces of this, and that's great. I just wanted to clarify for the group: do the survey group members feel like you're going to share written information with us? Do you want to make like a mini presentation at our next meeting? I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to get that part of the process done, get that information shared with all of us so that it's reflected in the recommendations we create.
I can't stand when I download an app.
I was thinking of the Jam board as a Google Doc. Isn't it a Google Doc, Elise, that we can all work on it at the same time?
Yeah, I'm pretty good with how the Jam board would let us start to brainstorm the ideas. I'm just wondering where the staff survey analysis fits into the process here. Are we waiting on that? Is that going to happen kind of concurrently with brainstorming? That's just what I'm trying to sort out in my mind a little bit.
Yes. I think what's really going to have to happen before we can start is that we need to give a little bit more time to have to read through these and to see what we see as a group is happening with the comments. And I do see a little bit of, if my memory serves me correctly, with what was said in the previous report, there is a little bit of correlation. And it could be that, a group of the board members feel frustration, and I'm seeing maybe some frustration on the side of the liaisons, though they were, pretty careful in their remarks, I think. And the other side of it, though, is that what I found surprising was how many of them have more than one staff person involved with the boards. And I know, for instance, with Stephanie Monson Dahl, and the public, because I work with her on public arts stuff, the urban trail and all. And we're constantly bringing in the ADA and the public arts people and the Parks and Rec people, and because of the art installations and all this. So there's a running group of folks who are coming in and out of our meetings constantly. So I think, well, yeah, that's true. There are a lot of other staff members involved in what we're trying to do. And so we don't really know to what extent those ancillary people are involved with. You know, how often are they there? How extensive is their partnership with that particular board? Jay and then Elise. Jay, I think you're okay, there you are. I think you're on mute though, maybe.
No, I just forgot what I was going to say.
You want to go to Elise and then maybe you'll remember.
Yep.
I understand this. Elise, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, just in response to like what you were talking about and the number of staff that are involved, I was very so I took all the numbers that people put in that column for how many additional staff members are involved. And first of all, every single board is staffed by more than just the one liaison.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to share just a little thing real fast. Here we go. So we had 26 people respond to our survey, and adding up all of the extra people involved in the meetings, there were 57 additional people involved in the meeting. So basically, for every one assigned liaison,
Right.
there's 2 additional staff members.
Right.
And from one of the comments, it sounds like it's city policy to have a liaison, to have another staff person who's like starting and stopping the live stream. And then there's like a backup person in case the liaison or the tech person can't be there. And that seems like a lot. Like if we're talking about staff burden, I mean, we have triple the number of staff involved than we really need.
Yes, yes. Now, see, I will say that public art or the urban trail meet, we don't have any technology. We meet face to face, and we're doing good if we've got paper.
But the live stream is still happening, right?
Yes.
Like Nat meets in person,
not with us.
but someone has to stand up and like press start on the live stream and press stop.
Right. And our meetings, we don't even live stream. Ours are
Oh.
for urban trail, not for public art, but for urban trail. Let me
Okay.
clarify that. Wow, I guess they would include those folks too. And I guess they need to sit through the entire meeting in case there's a glitch that they've got to be there. But wow, that is costly.
Or at least be on call.
Right. Right.
This is kind of getting into some recommendation type thing, but something I thought about, like reading through some comments, and like when that word technology came up big in that word cloud from Jack, it is the staff members who, they're not IT people, and they're being asked to start and stop and troubleshoot the live stream. And so now we've got 26 people who it's not really in their job description to be IT people, having to serve as IT people. If you had one person or 2 people who, like worked in shifts to support the IT component of the boards, then now you replace those 26 people with just like 2 or even 3 people if you have to like spread it out a little bit. But then you'd have like a certain person on call in particular hours that's going to support these meetings, and it takes some of the burden off staff to do that.
Right. Nina? You're on mute.
You're muted.
sorry. Do we know, in fact, that there are 26 or 52 or however many it is different people? Or maybe it is the same handful of or couple of people who do the backup for these things?
We don't know
Maybe
if they're discrete individuals. We just know this is the number of people. So it could be Joe Blow, who's the IT person for Parks and Rec, and he's doing all of the P&R and public art and civic
Right.
center
So
and
it's
whatever else.
possible that it's already the case that there are some people who just serve as backup for multiple different boards, and maybe the duplication or the overhead is not as large as it seems at first blush.
But it still is those man hours. It's still, you know, it may be the same person doing it all the time, but it's the man hours involved. Patrick, and then Elise.
Yeah, and I would just note it's surprising though if there are like, you know, floating IT staff supporting that part of meetings. I don't think that's the case. But then you wouldn't expect the primary staff liaison is reporting consistently frustrations with technology. It seems there's something there that isn't working as it should.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I had to say.
Elise?
I'm just going to read a couple of comments. So in the question, are there other staff persons involved with this board? Yes. And then if yes, approximately how many staff members are involved? Some people just put a number, but there were 3 responses that also included some additional information. I was just going to read those. That might help us understand this. The liaison for the Riverfront Commission says we are in transition and have 2 additional support staff, but ultimately I believe it will be 1 support staff. And then we've got for Public Art and Culture Commission, the liaison says 1 person helps with tech and minutes at the meetings. I don't have a dedicated backup staff person to assist with running the meeting. And then for the Riverfront Commission, it says the PUD, I don't know what PUD is, Planning and Urban Design, I don't know. The PUD assigns 1 primary staff liaison and 1 tech support person to each of the 9 boards we manage. For 90% of our boards, we also have a backup staff liaison. So there's staff liaison, tech support, and backup staff liaison. It would appear.
Oh, let me ask you this. I'm going to be in a meeting with Stephanie tomorrow, and that's her comment. Those are her comments. Is it okay with y'all if I ask for clarification on some of that?
Sure. Yeah. The comment from is Steph. I don't know. Do I have her in here?
Yeah, it's F. Monson. S. Monson. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. She's the one who said the thing about primary staff liaison, 1 tech or 1 backup staff. Yeah, certainly.
I might ask her if we don't run over tomorrow, what some of that might mean, just to get a clarification, just to see where that's headed. Because she's one of the ones that's been doing this the longest.
Just one other thing I want to add about this comment about 1 person helps with tech and minutes at the meeting. I don't know if it's going this way for like all the boards, but has anyone looked at the meeting minutes that are being posted for boards recently? They're like, it's just like what's going, like the general, what's being discussed with a timestamp. So people are expected to go to the YouTube recording and go to the timestamp, and then so like the minutes are nothing. It's the agenda with a timestamp, and it actually really upsets me that there aren't written minutes, because that's assuming that someone is able to go and live stream it and like listen to the comments. So as far as needing a staff person to like do the minutes, I'm kind of rolling my eyes a little bit, just to be honest.
Yeah, that's something else I might ask her about. Patrick?
Yeah, and I would just add that one of the things I've learned about with open meetings laws is that they're not required to keep super detailed minutes. Like if there's a vote, you have to say who made the motion, what the vote was. But in terms of capturing discussion, there's not a legal requirement that it's a detailed account, which makes it even more important that there is a video or audio recording, and ideally a written transcription off the video, if nothing else.
That's it. Oh, excuse me, y'all. That's interesting. Huh. Wow. That, going back to one of the major statements made in our board member survey about accessibility and being able to participate, or if you couldn't go to the meeting, to be able to see what was done at a specific meeting. If you don't have all that technology and ability to understand how to use that technology, that is problematic. Go ahead, Elise.
My other thought on as it relates to like the staff burden that's being reported and directly relating to like these minutes, it used to be that, in terms of officers, there'd be chair, vice chair, and secretary, and it would be a board member's responsibility to take those minutes. And it seems like when I started doing boards, which was in 2021, they were transitioning all of the secretaries out and just going to staff members taking the minutes. So it seems a little weird to me that like staff are saying that they're burdened in to some extent when it's like, here was this thing that wasn't their responsibility that now staff have taken on as their responsibility. And I don't know who made that call to start doing it that way, but it seems like, that was a thing that they took on that they didn't have to.
Well, I know in the last couple of meetings that we've had, we're doing the minutes. I mean, Stephanie will actually say, somebody, can you take the minutes and send them to me and I'll distribute them.
I'll just note, I was on the Human Relations Commission when I served, had that discussion about who would be secretary. And one of the reasons that was shifted to staff more is it makes it really hard for a member to participate if they're taking minutes. So I tend to support that should be a paid role, a support that the city provides. But I agree that did create an additional burden for staff that was kind of created by the city, perhaps for good reasons, but it's not as though they hired additional staffers to do that, right? They increased the workload, didn't increase capacity, and are now surprised that it's more work.
I mean, you've basically had to double the staff. We've talked about it's tripled because of the backups, but now if you have your staff liaison who is there to participate and not take minutes, now you have to double up your staff who are there so that you do have the person to do the minutes and the tech.
Interesting. Okay, so we lost Nina. Let me summarize. We're gonna each of us individually are going to delve more into the data itself and get more familiar with what the comments are from the 26 respondents. And we're going to put any comments onto the Jamboard if we have just questions or comments or observations, recommendations, whatever you want. You just use that Jamboard and just put your sticky notes. Be sure and put your name on them so we'll know who to come back to. And then I'm seeing here, Nina, you said, Elise, you say you're happy to make a short presentation with some bullet points via email. That was 20 minutes ago. What was that about?
Oh, Patrick was asking the people who are doing like the bulk of the analysis, how do they want to share that work, especially if we're trying to share it before our next meeting so that people can work on the Jamboard. Okay,
sounds good. All right. And Nina was saying too. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I think it sounds to me like the survey folks are going to do their amazing survey work again, looking at the staff results, producing
Mhm.
useful outputs there. It seems like for those of us that aren't in that group, like we should make sure we're fully familiar with the board survey analysis that's already been done and
Yes,
use that to guide our exploration of the jam board and adding some of our initial thoughts there.
yes, that's, you're very good. Thank you. Any other comments, you guys?
I had
James?
just a very, very specific idea for the jam board.
Yes, sir.
So I mentioned it would be helpful if people put their initials when you add notes.
Uh-huh.
In some cases, we're going to agree with things that are already on there. And I checked and I noticed you can edit other people's notes. So I
Right.
think it would be helpful if you just did initial and +1 ideas that you agree with. And that way we might be able to asynchronously, start to indicate where we have consensus on certain either observations or eventually draft recommendations.
Beautiful. Okay, that sounds great. Anything else, you guys?
I
Thank
guess I
Kind of a
just
high level question that maybe like should have happened a year ago, but can someone set my understanding of when this all started, the idea of restructuring? Did that originate? Do we know? Did that originate from staff or council or in concert?
According to what Gwen told me, it originated from staff and Gwen took it on.
Do you believe that?
Obviously, I'm struggling with that. I'm 50-50 on it. I
Yeah.
can't decide. And I'm good friends with Gwen. I cannot decide. Elise, have you gotten any insight from Kim on that? Has she shared maybe a bit on that? I can't decide.
I'm not really recalling right now.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm getting at is as we think about recommendations, I'm kind of split between the idea of creating recommendations that stand, that are responses to the initial idea of how they were going to restructure. Like, no, don't do that, do this.
Mm-hmm.
Or recommendations that try to account for the reasons that they originally were wanting to do that. Are we trying to incorporate, because we've heard from former board members, staff, but if there's more to the story, is there more to incorporate in our consideration?
To be honest, I think that it created more of a stir than what maybe staff or council expected it to.
Definitely.
And sort of like all these other things that have occurred in our global public world since then about free speech and public input and participation and all that, it just kind of swirled into a lot of that. And so I think that whatever may have started, they realize that they've had to adjust a little bit. A lot, I don't know, but at least some. Elise, and then Patrick.
Some of the board member responses to the open-ended questions actually supported the original proposal, which was to, like, one comment actually says, eliminate ineffective boards.
Mm-hmm.
Or one comment specifically was to align boards with an analogous council committee so that there's a clearer, hierarchy with which to elevate their ideas. And I think the public just grabbed hold to this, we're going to eliminate boards and just leave 4, and totally forgot about all the rest of it, which I think did have especially realigning boards with an analogous council committee. I think that definitely has merit.
Mm-hmm. Right. A good point. Patrick?
Yeah, and I would just share from my perspective that it did appear to me that the original proposal was, kind of created by Gwen working closely with a small number of staff. It was then shared with more members of council. And I think the original idea was like COVID shut down all the boards. If there's a time to make drastic changes, it's now before we get them up and running again. I do think it's worth like considering, but not focusing too heavily on, council members may have different perspectives as to whether boards are helpful, whether they want that much input, whether they want government to be staff driven and council driven, or whether the public plays a really large formal role in the process. But I don't quite know. I think our job is to figure out how to build a really effective system for boards to participate, and not get too caught up in the political positions of our council members as to, how populist they are or not.
Okay. Thanks.
I agree with you that it's what can be most effective to hopefully bring about a community with high effective community engagement, to bring about the best outcomes for our city. That would be and hopefully that's where we'll get there. And I think that council has kind of realized that they needed to adjust their thoughts too on that.
And I would say that I do think that we probably should address some of the points of the original proposal. Some board members provided comments about it. Some staff members said, "Hey, are we still doing that original thing? Is that off the table?" I mean, like, it is up to us to consider. Do we think that like the city should have boards for all the initiatives that the city's focusing on and they need to be supported more? Do we think the system should be made smaller overall? I mean, these are difficult topics for us to weigh in on, but I think if we ignore those questions, then we're kind of opening the door for council or staff to answer it from our silence, which might not be what we intend.
Good point. Okay. Anything else, you guys? All right, then. Well, happy studying, reading, analyzing, evaluating, thinking. Appreciate it so much. And we'll meet third Monday next month.
Yeah, and I just wanted to express my appreciation to Elise for putting analysis together, putting a jam board together. Like, we actually have like a plan to do this collaborative work between meetings now, largely because Elise put in all of this work to create tools to make that possible. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. I mean, I wish every board had an Elise and a Jack and a Ted and a Jay that could help them move forward from that perspective. It would be wonderful. Thank y'all very much. We appreciate it so much. And it means that our product is so much better. So
and
before we go, I'm hoping everyone will treat the Jamboard as just an opportunity to like put anything out there without any like without having to evaluate anything first or like say no to something or another. It's just kind of a place to put everything, and then we can narrow things down later. No judgment about what's on there.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
I did want to ask Elise, would you mind sharing a link to that Jamboard to the Google group? Maybe you already did, but could you just repeat that message and just say we're looking for people to weigh in on it? And I just wanted to put out there, if anyone has issues using the interface or wants to provide comments in written form, send them on the Google group or send them to me directly, and I'm happy to do the technical piece of putting them on the Jamboard.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
I just don't want anyone to feel cut out because of the choice of tools,
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a nice evening, y'all.
You too.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.